Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning. And today, we've got a shell and choke combination that might work out for us, or it might not. I really don't know. I think there's a chance that this choke might be too tight for the load, but the load is a more budget option, which sometimes they prefer tighter chokes. So I guess it could kind of go either way here, and we're just going to have to try it and see what happens. Well, for the shell we've got out here today, it's another one that Jack sent us. A big thank you to him for sending some of these over. But we've got some of the Winchester Double X shells out here. They are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 1 3/4 ounce payload of number 5 shot, going about 1,300 feet per second. And I want to say that these range between like $14 and $16 a box, give or take a little bit. So they are kind of the in between the Super X cheap stuff and the Longbeard XRs being $25, $27. So these are kind of Winchester's mid-price, but still pretty cheap for a turkey shell as far as the lead shells go. And these have shown some decent results in the past, so there's definitely a chance that they can perform for us today as well. I think it's just going to come down to how they do through today's choke. And as for the setup we've got out here today, I brought out the Remington 1187 here. But for a choke, I went with this guy. This is an actual Remington brand TSS 650 constriction turkey choke. So being 650, you're definitely starting to get into the tight choke realm, that's for sure. It's not quite as tight as like your 640 or something would be from Carlson's, but still 650 with lead fives might be a little bit too tight, but again, these are a budget shell, which sometimes prefer tight chokes, so I don't know. There's a chance that this Remington TSS 650 works, and there's a chance that it just ruins our pattern at the same time from being too tight. But as for the test today, everything is the same as usual. The turkey paper is set up at 40 yards. I have the chronograph so we can get our velocity. So let's get you guys a view of the target. We'll take the shot, look at the chrono, and then go look at our results. I have some decently high hopes for this setup, but I think it's just going to come down to how these double X5s react to that tight of a choke. I guess if I had to put a guess out there right now, we'd see a pretty decent looking core area, but the outside edges are going to show some pretty decent signs of having too tight of a choke. But I don't know. Either way, let's go over here and take this shot and just see what kind of results we actually do get. Okay, so that shell gave us 1,400 through the chronograph. The box claims 1,300, so we are 100 above their claim. And 1,400, you're really starting to move out for a turkey shell, that's for sure. Typically, a lead number 5 turkey shell, you're looking at 1,200, give or take a little bit. So 1,400 is definitely getting pretty close up there into waterfowl territory. But I guess that doesn't really matter too much if it was still able to hold a pattern. So let's go down to our 40-yard target and just see what kind of pattern it actually did give us. All right, now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. Now, the Birchwood Casey, again, doesn't look all that great. This particular pack of them is flaking off weird again, but I think we can still see what we need to see here. The pattern might have been just a touch left. That just goes to show why you use the backers, and always test with the load and choke that you plan to hunt with, because you might need to hold a little bit different or adjust the red dot for it. But either way, what we see here is absolutely a good enough 40-yard turkey pattern. Our core central, say 14 inches right there, is definitely a little bit hotter than the rest of the pattern is. Now we do see a couple of voids in here that I would prefer not to see. There's definitely one right down there towards the bottom of our core area, and another one right up here on the top edge of it. But still, if the turkey was anywhere within that area right there, he's not making it through that whatsoever. I mean, you can see we have a good amount of leeway as well, because our core, I think, is pretty much right on the left edge of the turkey paper, and we still absolutely have a dead bird over there. So it does give you leeway, and looking at the overall pattern here, it's definitely a little bit more broad, a little bit more open than something like a longbeard shell would be, but I don't expect to get longbeard performance out of these double X shells. So overall here, for a lead 5 going through a 650 choke, that's not bad at all. I do think we're probably hitting the edge of where we're going to start to see some major blowout on the edges of the pattern here. I think we probably did start to see a little bit of that just by looking at kind of the outskirts of this pattern. It's not unusual that these will be a little bit broad, but it's just not a super even broadness, if that makes any sense. It is starting to get pretty sporadic and splotchy once you get outside of that main core area. So I do think this is pretty much the constriction limit, and they might like a 655 or something instead of this 650 a little bit better. That's something we're going to have to test and see. Either which way though, for a cheap shell, that would absolutely be a 40-yard turkey setup. Is it the prettiest pattern we've ever gotten? No. Is it up to the par of a longbeard shell? No, not really. But for a pretty cheap, basic lead number 5, that would get it done for you. Okay, and here's the wad from that shell, and for anybody who shoots a lot of longbeard shells, this is a longbeard XR wad. Winchester pretty much uses this wad in most of their turkey shells that I'm aware of, so definitely nothing too unusual to see. I do think just by looking at kind of the edges of these pedals here, like I said a minute ago, I think 650 is probably about the constriction limit. We're not poking pinholes through here just yet, but just by looking at kind of the crinkleness and how the wad opened up, I think that's probably about the limit as far as constriction before we're really going to start to see some weird looking patterns. But I don't know. Maybe we'll test it through a tighter choke and see what happens. But either way, nothing stuck down in there, and the wad does still look relatively decent all things considered. So nothing I'm too worried about here as far as this wad goes. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that pattern right there? Is it the prettiest looking lead pattern we've ever gotten? No, but it's far from the worst as well. And it could have been way worse considering it was lead 5s going through a 650 choke. So that's definitely not terrible at all things considered. For a cheap, budget-oriented shell going through a pretty tight choke, I would not be scared to hunt with that kind of a pattern. But I do still think we can tune these in a little bit better. Maybe a little bit less constriction might even it up just a little bit. It's not the perfect pattern, but it would absolutely take you a turkey, that's for sure. So as usual, leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little bit surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these double X5s? And what kind of results have you gotten out of them? And maybe what other choke combination might you want to see these through? We can run them through like the Carlson 640. I've got 655, 660s, and so on. So if there's a specific constriction you might want to see, then by all means let me know that as well, and we can test it and see what they do. So leave all that down in the comments and let me know your thoughts about it. But with that being said, I've got some more filming to do for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.